Speaking of which, I have an email here about people's identities and things and such. It's a poor transition, but we'll stick with it. Because this is an email from Brian in South Florida. So, Florida man. And it brings up an interesting point, even though it's not about an interesting person. Jim and Brian, I knew nothing of Ethan Page till he arrived at AEW. He did the ladder match thing. Then the following week, he had a good match against Allen 5 Angels. Of course, this is, once again, the comments of our viewers do not represent those of management here. After that match, he berated Justin Roberts, which I liked a lot. Well, I think everybody can get behind berating Justin Roberts. He then went on to give a great heelish promo that was overconfident, annoying, and prickish. It was great, and I was sold on Ethan Page. I instantly wanted to see more. But after Googling him, and God, doesn't that sound oddly sexual to use that in that fashion? After Googling him, instead of matches, I found a ton of social media crap. I mean, massive amounts. He was backstage with every outlaw goof, yucking it up. Doing blogs from home, surrounded by toys, comic books, and nerdy shit. Hey, we all like our comic books. Only the classic stuff. But he said, here he is now, raffling off a toy and joking about his trip to Disney. Just like that, I realized the larger-than-life heel promo was total bullshit. The bubble burst, and I no longer gave two shits about seeing this goof in the ring ever again. This is an exact example of what Jim has been saying for the past year. Is anyone believable anymore? Okay, I know nobody gives a shit about Ethan Page, but this raises a better point, and except I got to go back to the phrase, the larger-than-life heel promo that Ethan Page cut. And I'm not knocking Brian because I guess for today's standards it may fit. But is this where we are, that's a promo that's larger than life just because this jerk comes off one week as a kind of a obnoxious heel? What do you think? Is that a larger than life promo these days?
I mean, I'm not as negative on him as you because he's done stupid stuff, but just about everybody in the business has done stupid stuff. And from what I read, Impact kind of made him do it, or at least insisted on him doing it. But with that said, I liked his promo, but I wouldn't call it. It wasn't like a really special promo. And that's not to take anything away from it. It was fine for what it was, but over the top heel promos, just like of all time, or how was it phrased?
Larger than life.
Larger than life heel promos. Give me a break. Give me a break.
And here's the problem. Okay, this is the main point that I was going to bring up about this. 90% of the major box office attractions in professional wrestling would probably not have drawn a dime if people had known the real guy instead of the gimmick guy that was presented to them and that the talent made them believe was them. And there's obviously there's exceptions to that rule. There always is, but that's what these guys don't understand is wrestling has never been an actor playing a character. Whether you like it or not, it's you. That's why I always felt like guys ought to have a pretty good say in who they were because they were going to have to be that. But maybe in television, maybe it was this, could you liken it to the heyday of the soap operas when, the actor playing the heel on the soap opera that fucked around, the babyface girl or whatever, old women would be bashing him with umbrellas on the fucking street corner. But it's not an actor playing a part. It has to be you. And the larger than life personalities in the history of wrestling in any era always knew that and conveyed who they were supposed to be to the people instead of who they really were, which is why they got over and stayed over. In my opinion, your thoughts, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, there were some guys who successfully were able to be completely different people. I mean, on the on one side of it, you always heard stories like the heels are the nice guys and the baby faces are the jerks. Like you always heard that as a fan. But the one big one I could think of, and most guys, Michael Hayes is a version of Michael Hayes. That's what he was. That's why the Freebirds worked. The one big one on the other side I could think of, Pampero Firpo, the wild bull of the Pampas, was going back to his hotel room, the scrapbook.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, that's just radically different. But, he's a guy who came to this country and really worked hard and wanted to achieve a lot of things. And he had a goal in mind. And he had a say, like you said, he had a say in who he was because he knew what he could comfortably do.
Abdullah the Butcher, the wild man from the Sudan, who caused riots, engaged in bloodletting. If people had known that he was a obese African-American man from Ontario named Larry Shreve, it wouldn't have had the same fucking impact, even if he did exactly the same thing that he did for his entire career, if they had known that was the Sheik, for God's sake. But, I mean, you can find something. I mean, Flair may have been an evergreen guy. I mean, the guys, because he was so similar, except then if there had been social media and he revealed his insecurities, because Flair had problems that he's talked about with self-confidence, absolutely nobody that idolized Ric Flair would have wanted to hear that. You become a larger-than-life character by not admitting your human frailties. So, therefore, obviously, if you pointed out anybody's flaws and shortcomings or assholery or whatever, it would damage their image with some people. But for professional wrestlers, just doing ordinary things makes you more of an ordinary person. And for some reason, the younger generation feels that they want to identify with their heroes. But no, they basically, I think, want to say, well, look at him. He's a schlub like me and he's on TV. But that's a very small subset of the audience, as we see. The way that people got over was somehow my God, there were plenty of people in the country that knew 8 years after World War II that Hans Schmidt wasn't really a German Nazi. He was a French Canadian from Montreal named Guy LaRose. Some people knew that, but not a lot, because if they had, he would not have been one of the 5 highest paid professional athletes in the United States of America. You see what I'm saying? If you just admit you're playing a part, then you are telling the people that you are fabricated, synthetic, manufactured, phony. Whether you're in a phony business or not, sometimes was immaterial to a lot of people that they would believe in you. Stone Cold Steve Austin is the most modern example. But can you, just think of people down through history. If people had known who they really were or what they were really like, either the heels were so good, such real good guys, or the baby faces turned out to be such obnoxious pricks or whatever. But, the thing is, and that was the you said that you always heard the heels were nicer guys when you were a fan. Because for the most part, think about this, wrestlers were so over in those time periods that it was like being a rock star when you were a babyface, and that people idolized you all the time. And it was very easy, especially if you had that character trait to begin with, to become a self-obsessed, obnoxious prick, right? Because that's what causes that, is people fawning and making and petting all over you all the time. But the heels, they knew the absurdity of it, that they're supposed to go out and just piss people off and be rotten bastards. They got all their aggravation out, and they were usually in a better mood. But that's another thing that they don't teach in wrestling school and in the developmental centers or whatever. They don't teach people how to be how to sell themselves and be interesting personalities. They give them gimmicks, but they don't teach them how to be stars themselves in wrestling and work and what wrestling is all about and the way to think about it, as you used to learn in the territories and in the cars with veterans or whatever. And maybe OVW was the last place to emphasize that kind of mindset and behavior. But now they teach them from the start, oh, you're playing a part and you're an entertainer. And as a result, you get a bunch of people going out and pretending to be people.
Yeah, but that Matt Jackson, his acting.
See, that's the thing.
Yeah, he's trying to be someone he clearly isn't.
Think about this, folks. We all, when we were kids, made believe we were somebody. Where was when you were in the 50s, you were wanting to be a cowboy or a fucking cop or whatever the popular TV show was, but you always acted like or played like or wanted to be like or dreamed that you'd be this or that or the other thing. But when you got into wrestling in the territory days, when it was more structured and professional, you couldn't just say, I want to be a goddamn space alien from the planet Zambodia and get to do it without whoever was booking or running the show said, fuck you. We don't do space aliens. You're from Pittsburgh. Figure out something else, right? Now people are just allowed to be as preposterous as they want to. So they're still play acting. And they're just adults play acting. And unfortunately, that's, I think, in large part what has led to the massive viewer turnout of all wrestling of any genre today, because you can't believe anybody anymore.